Welcome to the very first episode on this channel dedicated to fan theories about the Elder Scrolls universe. Each video in this series will cover 5 fan theories that mostly look at the Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion. Since almost all of the content found on this channel is Oblivion related, it's fitting that most of these theories are based around that installment of the franchise. For today, there are 3 theories that are based around the game, and 2 theories that are based in the general Elder Scrolls universe. Some of these theories are surface level, and some may delve a little deeper. I'd love to hear your thoughts on these theories, as well as read any theories you'd like to present and mention down below. Now, let's go ahead and discuss these ideas. The first theory for today is that Vicente Valtieri, the resident Dark Brotherhood vampire in the Shadenhall Sanctuary, was actually a supporter or even a member of the Crimson Scars. In short, the Crimson Scars were a sub-faction of the Dark Brotherhood consisting of all vampires. They officially split from the guild in the Third Era year 421. While engaging in contracts and assassinations, their secret subplot was to infect every single member of the Dark Brotherhood with vampirism. Eventually, word of this plan got out due to a loyal faction member of the Dark Brotherhood who was also a member of the Crimson Scars named Solarian. This plot also included the killing of many members of the guild, and thus a form of the purification rite was enacted and almost all of the separatist vampires were wiped out. The theory goes that Vicente Valtieri was either a member or a supporter of the Crimson Scars prior to their official split from the guild, but was one of the vampires who remained loyal to the Dark Brotherhood and therefore was not a part of that purge. Little is known about Vicente and his background. When asked about himself, he says that he was turned into a vampire over 300 years ago in Vvardenfell, Morrowind. He hunted alone and was secluded for nearly 100 years before the Dark Brotherhood took him in. That means Vicente has been a member of the guild for roughly 200 years, yet he has only achieved the faction rank of Executioner. The idea goes that Vicente is no longer able to progress any higher within the ranks of the guild as a punishment for being a part of the Crimson Scars. Yet, he was allowed to live and continue to serve the guild for his loyalty and truthfulness in divulging useful information with regards to the Scars' whereabouts and movements. The other part to this theory is that if deemed worthy, Vicente will offer the dark gift of vampirism to members of the guild. This is in line with what the Crimson Scars sought out to achieve by trying to infect every member with vampirism, but with a twist from Vicente that only those who have proven themselves may receive the dark gift. Vicente would have been around in the guild during the Crimson Scars' inception and insurrection, with the sub-faction having a major presence in Cyrodiil, and Greywind Belmwith, the leader of the Scars, seemed very resourceful and persistent when it came to contacting fellow vampires, especially those in the main guild. It's a fun and interesting theory to ponder on. There are a few holes in some of the ideas, so it isn't entirely grounded, but still interesting nevertheless. The second theory for today is a more discussed idea which decrees that the 9th Divine, Talos, is the combined being of 3 souls: Tiber Septim, Zurin Arctus, and Ysmir Wolfhearth. The commonly accepted idea of Talos, the 9th Divine, is that he was the emperor who ended the interregnum and managed to unite all 9 provinces under one banner and empire. Through these accomplishments, it was believed he was chosen for divinity and upon his death ascended to Aetherius. The issue with Talos as a whole is that very little information is known about his early life and even during the Tiber Wars. A lot of his life is left up to interpretation and not a whole lot is considered factual and concrete. This theory is a rabbit hole in its own right, but a common ground for belief begins with stating that Tiber Septim was actually a Breton of High Rock, with his birth name being Hjalti Earlybeard. During the infamous Battle of Old Hroldan, legend has it that Ysmir Wolfhearth appeared to Hjalti as a storm and aided him in achieving victory, gaining the name of Hjalti Talos, meaning Storm Crown. Also during his time as a general, Hjalti's right-hand man, a battle mage, Zurin Arctus, played an important role in powering the Numidium, which was the brass war machine gifted to the Empire by the Tribunal. Zurin's heart was used as its power source, beginning his transition to the entity known as the Underking. The theory has multiple starting points, but more or less ends with the united Divine Trinity. Some theorists state that it was due to the workings and powerings of the Numidium that the grace and souls of these 3 individuals became intertwined. Other theorists state that it was the essence of these 3 working together during the Tiber Wars that led to the overall creation of Talos. That Hjalti and Zurin create the identity of Tiber Septim, the general who went on to unite Tamriel. Zurin and Ysmir together created the identity of the Underking, as it is widely believed that Ysmir had a hand in Zurin's transition into the Underking. And, finally, Ysmir and Hjalti together create the identity of Stormcrown, the spiritual leader who was recognized by the Greybeards and Nords alike as the Dragonborn. Then, the theory arrives at the idea that the process of ascension was due to the concept of mantling. Mantling is a fairly complex and little-known subject within the Elder Scrolls universe. The layman's concept of mantling is act like them to become like them. If there is a role needing to be filled within Orbis, the universe itself should will it into existence, if the right fit for the job has come along. The theory goes on to suggest that the united spirits forming Talos mantled the godlyhood of Lorkhan, whom some consider the missing ninth divine. Therefore, with the combined essence of Hjalti Earlybeard, Ysmir Wolfhearth, and Zurin Arctis, with potentially the topped magic and abilities of the Numidium, the spot of Lorkhan as the ninth divine was mantled and assumed by the united spirit known as Talos. This theory is incredibly intriguing, and I urge you to learn more about it, as this was just the tip of the iceberg described in the video. It is incredibly thorough, complex, and generally not agreed upon in every aspect. So, if you want to learn more about it, there are some great resources online that supply this information. The third theory for today suggests that the goblins we see throughout Cyrodiil and Oblivion are actually a degenerative form of elves similar to the Falmer in Skyrim and even potentially related to Orsimer. The theory begins with the notion that goblins have similar features to the Falmer with their humanoid appearance, pointy ears, large clawed hands and feet, and gaunt faces. They also tend to congregate in dark underground areas, again, similar to that of the once lively snow elves. The theory also continues with the idea that goblins have an innate ability to be able to cast spells without any prior knowledge or teachings, practically as if it's a natural talent, similar to what the other races of Mer are able to magically produce. Goblins are identical in coloring to orcs in that they are a deep, dull shade of green. This is brought up because Orsimer are also outcasted variations of elves whom many seem as lesser than the other races. The reason they are treated with slightly more respect than goblins is likely due to their overall intelligence and resemblance to man and Mer. The idea of something called the Goblin Kin comes from the more slanderous theory that goblins, ogres, orcs, gremlins, and reeklings are all related to one another and such should be treated the same. More specifically though, it is believed by some that goblins and orcs are closer related to one another than originally thought. Especially when Orsinium was founded, fellow goblinkin were allowed to reside within its walls and perimeters, showing an alliance that has not been seen before. It is also believed that goblins worship a god called Moloch, which is speculated to be an aspect of, or the exact same entity as Malakath/Moloch, the respective worshipped gods of the Orsimer. Using the concept of evolution and the example that we see from the Falmer, this theory is most certainly thought-provoking and could have some ground to stand on. The fourth theory for today suggests that being dragon-blooded and being the Dragonborn are two different blessings. For example, Tiber Septim, your character in Skyrim, and Mirok, the first of the Dragonborn, have the body of a mortal but the soul of a dragon, being referred to as the Dovahkiin in dragon language or simply the Dragonborn. It is a blessing bestowed upon mortals by the divine Akatosh. Put simply, they have the ability to absorb dragon souls, which gives them the knowledge to quickly learn and master the way of the Thu'um, or shouting, which otherwise would have taken years of practice. They are the pinnacle of what every Nord should strive to be within the Nordic culture. However, the blessing of being a Dragonborn isn't exclusive to Nords. Now, the concept of being dragon-blooded begins with Saint Alicia, as the story goes that when she founded the first Cyrodiilic Empire, it was through a covenant with Akatosh. The sacred compact saw Alicia's bloodline bestowed with Akatosh's own heart, in which a separate blessing was placed upon them. This blessing would allow Alicia's line, and those also blessed with the dragon blood, to wear the Amulet of Kings, which, as we know, keeps the dragon fires lit and the influences from Oblivion on Mundus at bay. From a subjective point of view, it seems as though the theory suggests descendants coming from the line of a Dragonborn have the blessing of the dragon blood, but are not considered to be Dragonborn. So, While Tiber Septim might have been the actual Dragonborn, Emperor Uriel Septim VII, a descendant of Talos, has the Dragon Blood Blessing, but is not considered to be Dragonborn, and therefore doesn't have the soul of a dragon, and pretending dragons were around during his time, could not absorb any dragon souls. He would also have a much more difficult time learning and using the power of the Thu'um. Another angle to approach the theory is that those with the dragon blood were meant to be rulers and protectors within the White Gold Tower of Cyrodiil and prevent any Daedric invasion on Mundus, essentially claiming that the two blessings are completely separate and do not have anything to do with each other whatsoever. I really do enjoy this theory, and I can certainly see it as being plausible. The unfortunate part is that very little distinction has actually been made between being dragon-blooded and dragonborn. And if anything, I can maybe see the notion of all dragonborn are dragon-blooded, but not all dragon-blooded are dragonborn, having some ground to stand on, as we see the two empirical lineages of Alicia and Tiber Septim beginning as actual dragonborn, yet we see no such claim is made for their descendants, other than them being able to wear the Amulet of Kings, which does imply that they are dragon-blooded. The fifth and final theory for today suggests that if Hannibal Traven, the Archmage of the Mages Guild, had not banned necromancy, there would have been no war or rising conflicts with Mannimarco and the Order of the Black Worm. Common rumors around the province say that upon his ascension to Archmage, Hannibal Traven was quick to outlaw the practice of necromancy within the Mages Guild. This was apparently the catalyst for the resignations of dozens of guild members, including half of the Council of Mages. Interestingly, while outlawed within the guild, necromancy was still legal to perform in Cyrodiil, just with no one affiliated to the guild being allowed to practice it. In one of the first tasks that Hannibal Traven sends the hero of Kvatch on, he mentions that the guild has been spying on and keeping an eye out for increased necromancy across Cyrodiil, even sending undercover mages to infiltrate the ranks of the Order of the Black Worm. As Raminus Polus, a mage at the Arcane University, even states, the cult has been spotted at Wellspring Cave, and that notion is shocking as the necromancers were known for sticking to the shadows and staying away from the guild. The theory goes on to suggest that upon the banning of necromancy, many former guild members transitioned into the cult and likely convinced Mannimarco that the guild was a threat that needed to be dealt with. A keen example of this would be from Falcar, the former head of the Shaden Hall's Mages Guild, who began sending new associates on suicidal recommendation tasks when Traven was elected Archmage and banned necromancy. Through dialogue, it's obvious that Falcar had a growing distaste for the guild and even for Traven. Falcar flees the guild and joins the ranks of the Order of the Black Worm, where the player eventually runs into him again during the quest titled Ambush. In Ambush, the player sees him in a leadership role within the cult. It is very likely that Falcar had an influence on the cult's decision to press against the guild and ultimately Traven. This final theory certainly has a lot of points to support it. The higher ranking member, Raminus Polus, even subtly mentions that only since Hannibal Traven outlawed necromancy have the necromancers started attacking the guild in a more bold way. Apart from seeing them as competitors, I do fail to see why Mannimarco would attack the Mages Guild if not for them provoking him. He loosely explains to the player during the quest, Confront the King, that he is solely in search of power. And while it certainly was for the greater good that the guild was able to stop him, all the bloodshed, death, and soul entrapments held against the faction might have been preventable if Traven did not ban necromancy. So, that wraps it up for this episode of 5 Elder Scrolls fan theories. I'd really be interested in hearing your opinions on the validity and possibility of some of these theories. I'd also love to hear about any theories you think should be covered on the next episode of this series. Until next time, keep on adventuring.